I scared my dog. Gamers all around the flat universe. It's 5 a.m. Don't ask me why, but I'm staying up all night and we're here to make a guide. This is hopefully the ultimate unit counter guide that you will see, and hopefully it will forever and ever remain true. The reason why I'm making this a video and not just a link, because A, I need a YouTube video. I put in a lot of effort into this. It took me a couple of hours to do this, actually more than a couple of hours. Robbie from AO4 World was nice to make the thing like on the top and then on the side, and then I filled in the colors. So I'm going to explain what they mean, all right? So, yellow means even. So as you can see, it goes like across, and it's, you know, obviously those are mirror matches, Spearman, Archer, so those are yellow. Green means it counters it. Red means it's like hard countered by it. Green means it's hard countering it. Light green means it trades better, and then orange means it trades worse, but not exactly a counter to per se. The reason I made this is there's only one picture in all AOE4 community, and it's basically like Spearman, Archer, Crossbow, Horseman, Man-at-Arm, Knight. That's it. And it says what counters what, and it's also wrong. So I figured a lot of people ask me, like, you know, what counters this? What counters mass Mangudai, believe it or not? Or what counters mass this? How do I beat this unit comp? So I figured if I make something like this, it can be very, very helpful, whether you're, you know, newer player or you've been playing for a while and you're not sure how to counter a certain unit. Here it is. I do want to say that when I did these, I did some tests as well on the, especially on the new units, but this is not necessarily, this is not a 1 versus 1. Like, this is not like one spear versus one archer. This is like kind of like simulating real armies, you know, like at least 10 spear versus 10 archers, units trading even costs. And also I took in consideration that some units cost gold. So, you know, maybe a gold unit beats a unit that costs wood and food, but you know, or trades better. So I put that as equal because, yeah, it's beating it, but technically it's not really beating it because it costs gold and stuff like that. I did take micro in consideration. I did take in consideration that some of these units will have like units in front of them, tanking and stuff like that in real battle. So I kind of tried to basically, in my head, simulate what the fights would be looking like and what you should be making in order to counter a unit. Now, I do want to say, I also didn't make specific lists for like HRE Men-at-Arm or English Men-at-Arm, because I just clumped them up together because then there's too much variety and stuff. But in general, this list is good. I'll go through some. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. Spearman is the most straightforward one. So you should look at it like the thing from left to right. So Spearman versus Spearman, it's even. Spearman versus Archer, that's a counter unit of a Spearman. Spearman versus Men-at-Arm, that's a counter unit against Spearman. So Spearman versus crossbows, right? Spearman doesn't counter crossbows. Spearman doesn't get countered, hard countered by crossbows, but crossbows will trade better. So that's why I put orange. So crossbows should beat Spearman, like especially if you micro them. Jugunu, they are counter to they counter any unit that doesn't have armor, so that's a terrible trade. Now this is orange, right? And I want to explain stuff like this. So yes, hand cannoneers will beat out a fuck ton of spearmen, but in an even trade of resources, the spearman doesn't trade that badly because spearmen don't cost gold. Okay, that's why I wanted to talk about. Obviously, it counters all the cavalry units, but then it loses to horse archers and Mangudai because they can just kite. You know, if Mangudai were sitting there, Mangudai would lose, but I'm assuming that if you play in the game, the Mangudai player is not just going to stare at you, but he's going to micro a little bit. But obviously, I didn't consider perfect micro in any of these. There's also an interesting one that I wanted to mention, which is Spearman versus Tower Elephant. Yes, Spearman counters Tower Elephant. Tower Elephants are really bad now, but when they were a bit better, they kind of counter both. Spearman counter cavalry, and elephants are countered as cavalry. But then also, Spearman is weak versus archers, and Tower Elephants do really good DPS with their main attack, which is like the arrows. So technically they also counter Spearman, but Spearman should have a better matchup in there. So again, this comes down to micro, but in general, especially now that Tower Elves are nerfed, Spearman will counter those. Then you have Spearman versus War Elephants. Obviously they counter them. Spearman versus Lens Shits. Lens Shits demolish pretty much any melee unit completely. And then you have Spearman versus Musafari Warriors and Javelin Throwers. One thing I wanted to also say is there's no siege units, as you can see. If you need help with siege, I mean, I can give you a quick rundown. All the siege gets countered by cavalry and men-at-arms or spearmen if they get on top of them. Culverin beats all siege. Then Springald's are the next in line. Then you have stuff like Great Bombards. Obviously, Mangonels are good against ranged. They hard counter range, but they're also good against clumps of melee units. So, yeah, the reason I didn't put siege, because it's kind of like, you know, Culverins beat everything at the end of the day. That's a good question. No Grenadiers. Honestly, guys, the Grenadiers used to be OP as hell. But Grenadiers right now are complete trash, and I don't know at all how they trade against anything, and honestly no one makes them ever. So I just couldn't be bothered to test Grenadiers against all these units. Like literally no one makes them ever. Yeah, that's why I didn't put in Grenadiers. And I don't think I've excluded any other units, if I can remember correctly. But if a unit is excluded, like I said, there is a reason behind it. Ribaldequin. I mean, Ribaldequin counters like clumps of units, specifically melee, but it dies to any siege. So yeah. Fire Lancer, where I counted Fire Lancer as a horseman because it is basically a horseman. It gets countered and it counters the same things. It acts exactly the same, except on charge it has a little explosion. So it's like a better horseman, but it is a horseman. So yeah, you can see, like, you have archer units that technically, depending how good you micro them, they will get, you know, better value out of them. Melee units, I mean, you kind of aim move them, you can't really micro them too much. But you can see there's some like there's some units that are like they either hard counter something or they're hard countering stuff. There's kind of like no in between. One thing I want to say as well is about the land shits. So you can see there's a lot of green or red in their tab, right? Rarely kind of like middle of the road kind of thing. And there's these two even trade things. Now the reason why I put this is because if you clump up crossbows or hand cannoneers, yeah, Lenschanecht will win. But if you use like spread formation, ranged units should win. But they will also be able to get a decent trade. So the reason why I put even is because the fights can go either way depending on the micro of the players. And like I said, most of the stuff can be microed, but this is one of those where the difference can be, you know, Lens Connect can be like green versus crossbows and hand cannoneers if the opponent clumped them up, or it can be red if opponent spreads a little bit and you know, protects them with something else. Looking at this, I feel like Camel Archer is too strong. I mean, Camel Archer is one of the best late game units in the game. I think Camel Archer is probably the best range unit in the game, beating out even hand cannoneers because they don't cost gold. But as you can see, Camel Archer only really has one counter, and that's a unique unit. So yeah, Abyss in late game is really good. I've been saying this for a while. And as you can see, archers technically are supposed to counter Camel Archers, and they do in Feudal, but in Imperial, not so much. They have also bad matchup in Horsemen, but again, if you reach 40 Camel Archers, then Camel Archers actually counter Horsemen. So that's something that you guys need to take in consideration, especially when you're thinking about range versus melee units. The more range units you have in a clump, they will counter melee units, but that's why, you know, in AoE you don't just make one unit, like you make more units. So this is a general idea, like the way you should be looking at this, like, okay, my opponent has, you know, let's say archers and spearmen. What do I make against that? So then you find a counter against both, and you're like, okay, men-at-arms counters both of those, so I can go men-at-arms to counter spearmen and archers. So this is like the general idea of that, and not to mention you can also add siege like Mangonos kind of make the ranged kind of you know, spread and give you a better fighting chance. There's an interesting one as well, by the way. In Knights versus Hand Cannoneers, you can see it's yellow. They do trade almost even, resource for resource. It also depends how many Knights, how many Hand Cannoneers. If Knights get a charge off, they will get a favorable matchup, but if they don't, then Hand Cannoneers will melt them. Then if you have like some units in front of Hand Cannoneers, they're much better than the Knights are. So yeah, there's a bunch of those. Someone's asking, do Javelin Throwers actually counter Tower Elephants? Yes, they Omega counter them. They don't counter them, they Omega counter them. Javelin Throwers have bonus damage versus Tower Elephants because they are ranged units. And they actually outrange them by quite a bit. So if you actually micro, you can kill a Tower Elephant without Tower Elephant shooting at your Javelin Throwers. Bro, this took you 4 hours? Well, you do realize I actually have to think about stuff, right? It's not like I was like, ah, fuck it, green, red, green, red, green, red. You know, there's a bunch of matchups that I genuinely didn't know. The funny thing is, doing this, I realized there's a lot of matchups that are just like interesting. Like I said, like Camel Riders versus Jugunu is really interesting because it's cavalry, but it loses to Jugunu. Oh, Janissaries. I mean, Janissaries are the most extreme unit, by the way. They hard counter all the cavalry, and they lose to every ranged, and they also lose to melee units. There it is. I'm gonna try to leave a link for this either in the comments, in a pinned comment, or in the description of the video for this beautiful picture, or you can just screenshot it. It's up to you. But I hope it helps you guys in whatever way. Like I said, whether you're new or you've been playing the video game for a while. But that is going to be it. Just a little short video. You know, I usually have 1 hour videos. This one is like 12 minutes, which is a record of mine. If you're watching this on YouTube, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps you. Like I said, I put in a lot of effort. Robbie from AOA4 World. They might also put it on their website, by the way, as well, so you can check it out there. I think he mentioned something like that. I'm not sure. Don't hold me accountable for that one. For Twitch gamers, let's keep going.